Now, with our economic injury disaster loan and our advanced programs, Christina mentioned some of the highlights of the EIDL loan program. It has that low interest rate, the long 30-year terms, which can really help a business open up cash flow and is a better form of debt than some of the alternatives like credit card or other debt that Christina mentioned. Also, likely tomorrow or later this week, we're going to be announcing some changes to the EIDL program, but it will be good news changes. We're going to be increasing the cap, the dollar amount limit that you can get on a loan. And we'll also be expanding some of the uses for the loan. While this is mostly used for working capital, we'll be expanding some of those uses, and we expect that announcement to come tomorrow. So we were hopeful it would be out today, but we will certainly share this with the team here. And at the end, I will share how you can subscribe to updates to get that latest news and information and program updates as soon as they are published and made available. But one thing that won't change is that the economic injury disaster loan is a great low interest form of debt for small businesses to help carry them through some difficult times that many are experiencing due to the pandemic. I also want to mention our targeted advance and supplemental advance programs. These are actually grants, so they don't have to be paid back. They are targeted for business owners that are in low-income communities, and there's a map on our website where you can see if your business falls in one of those areas, and is also targeted toward businesses that have been hardest hit. So you can see by either that 30 or 50% reduction in revenue, and also for smaller businesses. So you can see by the employee count by either 300 or fewer or 10 or fewer. Now, the good news about all three of these programs, the economic injury disaster loan, the targeted advance, and the supplemental advance, is you can start the process to apply for all three through one application. And that's the application that Janie will walk you through. By submitting that EIDL application, you can apply for the loan, and then that will also be the starting process to get more information if you're eligible to apply for the targeted advance grant and the supplemental advance grant as you're eligible. One thing that I want to note, and I'm sure Janie will touch upon this too, is that our authority to fund the EIDL program connected to COVID expires December 31st. But because with most loan programs, it can take weeks or maybe even more than a month to process, we want to make sure you start that application process now so that your loan can be fully processed and funded before our authority to fund those loans expires December 31st. Again, there's still billions of dollars remaining, and we want as much of that money to go to the smallest of the small businesses that have been hurt by the pandemic and help them carry through so they can recover and continue to move their business forward. Now, as you can see on the screen, one of the great ways, in addition to the funding that we provide, another outstanding resource is the SBA Resource Partner Network. These are certified business advisors who provide one-on-one business advising, counseling, and training. Some of them are on the call today taking questions in the Q&A box. Some of them were mentioned earlier during Christina's introduction, but regardless, these advisors are here to help small businesses answer tough questions, help them through the funding process, help create a resiliency plan to move your business forward, and just help you through whatever challenges your business may be experiencing. This is one of the best resources that SBA has to offer because everyone needs someone to back them up and help guide them through many challenges and tough decisions that small business owners need to make. And this is a way for a small business owner to be able to confidently make sound decisions and move their business forward. So please, if you haven't already taken advantage of the advising network, visit that sba.gov local assistance web address and get connected with a local advisor near you. I'd like to share one example of a business owner. This is Ephraim from Boom Boona Coffee. If you are in the Renton area, you might have heard of him. He began selling his high quality, responsibly sourced green coffee beans from Ethiopia to East African communities in the Seattle area. Now, even though he had a background in finance, he found himself with more questions than answers when it came to starting and running his business. So he was able to use a business mentor through SCORE, which is one of those resource partners I just mentioned earlier. And that resource partner was able to help answer his questions, because running a business is sometimes very different than doing the actual work that goes into the business. He also was able to not only get great resource help through his business advisor to get him the knowledge he needed to effectively run his business, but was also able to use an SBA microloan program to open his first location. And when the pandemic hit, he was able to use a PPP loan from the SBA and that economic injury disaster loan we're going to be talking about today to keep his doors open, to keep his 15 employees employed, and to keep his operations moving through some challenging times. So there are certainly examples of how not only relying on that resource partner network can help your business, but also some of the financing options that can help you through either growing or, like we've seen recently, challenging times. So before I turn it over to Janie, here's that web address I mentioned earlier. If you want to subscribe to get SBA updates, that sba.gov/updates is how you can subscribe for email alerts, so you can get the latest news, information, training, resources that are available to you. And that's where we're going to be hopefully announcing some of those improvements and changes to the EIDL program tomorrow. So please sign up for that today if you're not already subscribed. Or of course, following us on Twitter, calling our office, or emailing us. We're happy and honored to help small businesses and local partners who are supporting small businesses with any questions you may have. Thank you again. And now I'm going to turn it over to our finance subject matter expert, Janie, who's going to walk you through the application process for the economic injury disaster loan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Christina. And we're excited to be here today to present this information to you. And let's go on to the next slide, please. I'm in the Seattle district office along with Melanie, and we are giving you today the latest information on the COVID EIDL program through today, although there will be upcoming news tomorrow that will modify this a little bit. But as of today, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program was actually the first SBA funding product to deal with the impact of COVID-19 on small businesses in our communities. Originally, there were two components: the Economic Injury Disaster Loan itself, which is repayable, and the EIDL Advance Grant Program that was up to $10,000. And businesses were funded at $1,000 per employee on their application. The COVID EIDL program has continued to evolve to meet the changing needs of the business community. When the application process was very difficult at the onset, the Office of Disaster Assistance, which manages this program, revised the application process to make it more efficient and effective for small businesses to apply for the loans. And As we started with a maximum loan amount of $150,000, the dollar amount maximum evolved to $500,000 as it currently is, and will continue to evolve to an increased dollar amount with the news tomorrow. So we're going through this process to help you be able to access funding. And in 2021, after the EIDL advance funds had fully been utilized in 2020 in July, the acts that came out in December and in March increased and provided funding for the targeted EIDL advance and the supplemental advance programs for this year. To access those grant programs, you do need to go through the application process for an economic injury disaster loan. And we're going to go through this to give you a little bit more information on the overall process. Next slide, please.
We'll probably slow these down just a little bit, Jenny, just for interpretation.
Okay, no problem. So now we're going to do the COVID EIDL program overview. There are two categories of small business loans. The product categories are the micro loan and the full loan. They are just defined by the actual loan amounts. Micro loans are in the range of $1,000 to $25,000. The full loans are any loans more than $25,000 to $500,000. In terms of application requirements for the microloans, the benefit to you as a business owner is that there is no collateral requirement and there is no personal guarantee. And for your convenience, the application is mobile friendly. For the full loans, on all loans that are more than $25,000, there is a collateral requirement. The SBA simply takes a uniform commercial code security interest on the business assets of the borrower. So that's considered a UCC filing with the state of Washington for businesses that are in our state. Again, it is limited to just the business assets. There is a personal guarantee required on all loans over $200,000 by any 20% or more owner in the business. Due to the complexity of the full application, it is not a mobile-friendly process. Many types of organizations are eligible for an economic injury disaster loan and the corresponding targeted and supplemental advances. Small businesses, including affiliates that have 500 or fewer employees or are defined as small per the Small Business Administration size standards, are eligible. This includes sole proprietorships and independent contractors. Cooperatives, including affiliates, which have 500 or fewer employees, are also eligible. Employee stock ownership plans, or ESOPs, including affiliates that have 500 or fewer employees, are eligible. Tribal small businesses with 500 or fewer employees are eligible. If you have an agricultural business like a farm and you have 500 or fewer employees, you're also eligible. Most privately owned nonprofit organizations, including religious nonprofits, are eligible regardless of size if they meet the other program eligibility requirements that we're going to go over through this presentation. Other eligibility requirements that are taken into consideration as part of your application are, for each 20% or more owner, they must have a personal credit score of at least 570 or above. In addition, the business must have evidence that there was an investment in it on or before January 31, 2020. That means that it was either in operation on or before January 31st, 2020, or you can evidence that it was organized and ready to be in operation by January 31st, 2020. Again, all owners of 20% or more of the business must have one of the following characterizations. If the owner is a legal entity, it must have an employer identification number. If the owner is an individual, then the individual must have either U.S. citizenship with a social security number, or a non-U.S. citizen who resides in the United States and is classified as a non-national citizen or qualified alien. This means that you have legal permanent resident status, and that's referred to typically as a green card. So those are the criteria for the eligibility related to the owners of the business. So what documents do you need in order to apply? If you were in operation before January 1st, 2020, you will be required to have filed your 2019 federal tax return for the applicant business. It is beneficial if you also have the 2020 federal tax return for the applicant business. You will be asked to complete an Internal Revenue Service form 4506T as part of the application. And you complete this now online when you apply. One of the very difficult issues with the 4506T form is that it is a complex document to complete accurately. And the IRS form 4506T is required because it enables the SBA to access, with your permission, transcripts of your federal tax returns that you filed related to the business income. And those transcripts need to come from the IRS. So this document enables us to obtain them, again, with your permission. If the 4506T form is completed incorrectly, it does delay the processing of your application to a significant degree. If you happen to have started your business on or between January 1st, 2020 and January 31st, 2020, then your documentation requirements change slightly. May I have you go back, please? Thank you. What you will need to provide, if available, is your 2020 federal tax return for the applicant business. If the 2020 federal tax return is not available, then you may submit either internally prepared or company prepared balance sheet and income statement documents, or externally prepared balance sheet and income statement documents. And again, internally simply means company prepared from QuickBooks or whatever source documents you have. Externally means you either have a bookkeeper or an accountant or a CPA prepare your balance sheet and income statement. The income statement is also known as the profit and loss statement. I want to have you remember that in operation also includes businesses that may have not yet opened for business. So you will need to evidence your organizing documents, such as your business license, contractual agreements, purchase orders or invoices for needed equipment or machinery, any invoicing for advertising that you've done, or any ads that you have placed for employees. Okay, so you may be asked to provide that type of additional documentation if your business was in operation on or before January 31st, 2020. We want to make sure that you meet the eligibility requirement of the program in relation to your starting date. The next task is that we want to know how much you may borrow. Your actual maximum loan amount is determined by a formula, and it is based on your business type and the date you began operation. So this amount is actually auto-calculated when you're going through your EIDL online application. That is a recent adaptation or change to the application. And it is beneficial for you because you know automatically when you're going through the application how much you will be able to borrow at a maximum. The application also allows you to request a dollar amount of your choice up to that maximum calculation. So the general economic injury formula is done by taking your 2019 revenue and subtracting your 2019 cost of goods sold, if you have a cost of goods sold, a dollar amount on your return. Then that remaining amount is multiplied by 2, and that is your maximum loan amount. And we are going to be going over a chart to give you an indication of how to look at your revenue and cost of goods sold information from your tax return based on your business type. This is the tax return reference table. So what you do is on the left side, you choose your entity type.
所以在
And
这个左面的时候呢，这个地方呢，你选择你这个所这个设立的这个法人实体法人的这个类别。
so there are two self-employed categories.
所以就是自我个体营业是有2类。
The top line is for
这个
general
最上面的
and the top line is for general businesses filing a Schedule C. The second self-employed line is for farmers using the Schedule F. You then have your 1120 forms. The 1120S is for S corporations, and the 1120 is for C corporations. Cooperatives have a tax form of 1121 Cs, and partnerships have a form 1065. Nonprofits have the 990. And if you're a privately owned nonprofit organization, you also can file a 990 EZ. I would like to point out that if you are a limited liability company, you will follow the instructions on the IRS form that you are filing for your LLC, which may be a Schedule C document or an 1120S. So I would like to go back to that slide for a minute. On that chart, I do want you to look at the identifying lines per tax form for the gross receipts and for the cost of goods sold. If the cost of goods sold is not applicable or 0 on your tax form, you may need to use the designated line 31, line 18, or line 17 for your expenses as indicated on the chart. So please follow the chart. It will help you get through your application most efficiently. Next slide, when you're ready. What can you do to help speed up the processing time? One of the very important things is to have your business person, whoever is filling out your application, to take their time and fill out the application accurately. Double check it before you go on to the next section. There are 4 web pages for the application, and you have ample time for each one to make sure that they're accurate. And at the end, you have a summary of the information that you are able to review and do edits on if you identify anything as being incorrect. So you have plenty of opportunity to make sure that that application is accurate. We are recommending that you keep a copy of your online application, and you can do that by simply printing out the summary page when you get to that section at the end of the application prior to submission. The other thing that is extremely important is to monitor your emails, looking for an email that ends in @sba.gov. That email is associated with the processing of your application, and you need to respond quickly to SBA requests for application information, signatures, and approvals. There is a timeline designated in the email. It may be 3 days, it may be 7 days, but please respond timely within the guidance of that email. If there are any inconsistencies in the information that you have, such as, let's say you're in a new address as in 2020 or 2021, as compared to your 2019 or 2020 tax return address. Be sure to document the change in the address and explain what has happened and why there is a difference in those addresses. For any documentation that you submit as part of this application process, please be sure to send all of that information in a PDF file format. JPEGs, PNGs, doc files, although you can do them in them, they will not be accepted as part of the application because of the way the documents are maintained by the Office of Disaster Assistance. So again, very important, make sure all documents are in a PDF format. We've talked about the application process so far, but what if you have an existing loan and you want to increase it? Well, you can ask for an increase. And as I said earlier, last year's loans up until approximately April of this year, they were capped at $150,000. So now the cap is currently $500,000. So you may apply for an increase to increase your loan amount to what is actually allowed within the formula that we discussed earlier in this presentation. And how you do that is you go into the SBA EIDL portal, and the website address is indicated here. And in that portal, you request an increase. Your username is the email address you used in your application. And there's also a link to reset your password. The amount of the loan increase that you're actually eligible for is determined by, again, that loan formula calculation minus the loan amount you already have received. So an example of this is if your formula calculates out at a loan amount now of $450,000 and you received a loan already of $150,000, you would be obtaining a $300,000 increase in your loan. I do want to say that there is only one loan allowed per business, which is why there's this eligibility for the for an increase potential in your loan amount. Now we're going to cover the most common reasons for a decline in your application. One of the most common ones is an unsatisfactory credit history. And that means that your credit score did not meet the 570 credit score requirement. And again, remember that a credit report will be pulled on each 20% or more owner in the business. And the other thing I do want to point out is that if a business owner knows that they have frozen their credit history, they may need to get that opened up in order for the SBA to pull a credit report on them. All right, next slide, please, when you're ready. The next most common reason is unverifiable information. And when a decline letter is received with this as an issue, it does not detail out what is not verifiable. So the most common items that are not verifiable are, there can be one or more items that were reviewed by the SBA and caused the processor to question whether or not the information is valid from the applicant. Some of the most common items are the failed identity verification. If you received a loan last year and you're applying this year, the process for the application is a little bit different, and you may be asked to provide copies of the front and back of your identification to help validate your identity. Other items are international IP addresses or client devices associated with fraud or a high-risk IP address. So when we're looking at those, we go back in and make sure that the person, the owner who is applying for the business really is the actual owner of the company, and that the operation of the business meets the requirement of the SBA processing guidelines. The other thing that is unverifiable is when an inaccurate 4506T form is sent in and the IRS rejects the application or the request for the tax transcripts, then you get a decline saying that there's unverifiable information. Sometimes the tax identification number, whether it's the employer identification number or the Social Security number, is incorrect. And that may just be a typographical error, or it may be at the time of application, or it may be an entry error on the tax return itself when your CPA or bookkeeper, whoever helped you do that document. So we want to make sure that all of that information is accurate. And again, there is a timeline here when you get a decline letter. And in this case, you're given approximately 7 days to respond to the decline. And again, I want to say, with all of these decline reasons, you may request a reconsideration to reactivate your application and submit clarifying additional information. And we are getting better results with that as we are helping small business owners address the reasons for declines. The other reason for a decline may be that the economic injury is not substantiated. There are typically two possible reasons for this decline. One is last year when the EIDL advances up to $10,000 were issued. If your economic injury defined as your gross receipts minus your cost of goods, is less than the amount that you received in your EIDL advance, then you do not have an economic injury substantiated or evidenced. The other one is that the information submitted does not indicate an economic injury, meaning that if in 2019 you had a specific revenue level, and then in 2020 your revenue was consistent with your 2019 revenue, or it could have been more, then you did not sustain an economic injury, and it may result in a decline for your application. So again, if you believe any decline is an error, you may request the reconsideration of your application, and you would need to provide supporting documentation to evidence that. And an example in this case of a reconsideration is if you accidentally typed in an inaccurate revenue amount based on your tax return, then you have the opportunity to correct that. And we have documents that you would complete certifying the correct information to evidence the change. Another reason is simply a failure to respond, which is why we have been reiterating, please respond timely to any requests for additional information being made by the Office of Disaster Assistance. And again, when you have an application in process, please check your emails for an email coming from @sba.gov, because that is related to your economic injury disaster loan application. If you do not respond timely within the specified number of days in the decline letter, then the application will be withdrawn, and it will be assumed that the borrower did not wish to proceed with the application. Again, you may request reconsideration to reactivate this if that is an incorrect response. Since I've touched on the reconsideration process, we want to go through how to apply for reconsideration. First, you need to confirm that you meet all of the program eligibility requirements and make a determination, on those for each decline reason provided in your letter. And some of the items that we talked about already were if your business has 500 or fewer employees, you have a credit score of 570 or better, and then your business being in operation or in existence on or before January 31st, 2020. So these are very common items that do come up as part of the decline that you need to address. You can apply for reconsideration via the process that is outlined in your decline letter. So you have the opportunity to go in and do an email or a fax or a letter into the SBA Office of Disaster Assistance and request a reconsideration of your decline. The most efficient of those really is emailing your request in to pdcrecons@sba.gov. If you need additional assistance, please feel free to reach out to the Seattle District Office for assistance, or you may reach out to our Spokane branch office if you happen to be in Eastern Washington. And we will work with you to help you through the reconsideration process if you need additional support. We want to make sure you have every opportunity to have access to the economic injury disaster loan and the advances. So we're more than happy to help you. Now we're going to shift away from the economic injury disaster loan program to the EIDL advances. And as Melanie indicated, the EIDL, the actual economic injury disaster loan and the advance programs are now all in one application. So when you're going through the application online, you're filling out all of the questions, you're responding to all of the questions you need to for both the EIDL loan itself and the advances. Once you have submitted your application, you have the opportunity, if you're approved for an EIDL, the actual loan side, you can decline to accept it if you do not want the loan. And you can, if you are invited to apply for the advances, accept only the advance portion or grant portion that you are eligible for. So that's a very significant distinction. And again, you may be approved for the loan, but you do not need to take it. And you can just receive the grants if you are eligible for them. The targeted EIDL advance provides grant funds of up to $10,000 for applicants who meet the following criteria. The business address needs to be located in a low-income area based on the SBA EIDL online mapping tool at the designated website. You must demonstrate that you have more than a 30% reduction in revenue during an 8-week period beginning on March 2nd, 2020 or later, as compared to the same 8-week period in 2019. You must also have 300 or fewer employees. If you received an EIDL advance last year based on the number of employees times 1,000 and you did not have 10 employees, you are eligible then to receive the difference between the amount you already received under the EIDL advance up to the difference in $10,000. The supplemental targeted advance provides an additional grant of $5,000 to businesses that are again located in a low income area based on the mapping tool. And it's the same mapping tool as for the targeted EIDL advance. You're able to prove more than a 50% economic loss in revenue for an 8-week period beginning March 2nd, 2020 or later, as compared to the same period in 2019. This is limited to businesses that have 10 or fewer employees. So what I want you to understand is that the combined amount of the EIDL advance, the targeted EIDL advance, and the supplemental targeted advance will not exceed $15,000. The burning question is, how will I receive my approved loan funds? Well, once your application is approved, the SBA will provide you with loan documents that must be signed and completed. Please be sure to keep a copy of those documents for your records. They will come electronically and you will need to print them out. Once all 20% or more signers have signed the documents and returned them to the SBA, the loan proceeds are electronically deposited to your bank account using the information that was provided by you in your application. And you will receive those funds typically within 5 to 10 days of the time that the SBA receives your completed signed loan documents. So it's very important that when you're filling out your application, you make a determination of what your routing number for wire transfers is with your institution. It may not match the routing number, those first 9 digits on your check. And so you want to make sure you're using the appropriate bank routing number for electronic deposits for your institution. Many of you will be able to use the routing number on your check along with your account number. But please check with your financial institution to make sure that the routing number is correct. The other thing I would encourage you to do is just make sure, double check that all of the numbers are accurately entered in the system before you hit the submit button for your application. If you have questions, please reach out to the Small Business Administration Seattle District Office. We give you the opportunity to email us at info.sdo for Seattle District Office at sba.gov. You may reach out to us at 206-553-7310. Because we are not in the office due to COVID-19, you will be requested to leave a message, and we do our best to call you back the same day or the following day, depending on when you've left your message. You may also reach out to us via the website at sba.gov/WA. The phone number is 206-53. I'm sorry. Let's go back. That is a typo on the slide. Our phone number is 206-553-7310. So again, the slide does have a typo. Our apologies. And then if you need thank you. So 553-7310 is the accurate phone number. Thank you, Samantha. Once you have your loan or your advances, and if you need to have any servicing assistance, we do have the SBA Disaster Assistance Customer Service Center that you may reach out to. And we have the email address listed here for the actual economic injury disaster loans. And you may email disastercustomerservice@sba.gov. If you have questions regarding the advance side of the application documents, then you may reach out to targetedadvance@sba.gov. We do have an 800 number for the SBA Disaster Assistance Customer Service Center. It is 800-659-2955. And as you can see, we do have also a TTY number available.
All right, thank you, Janie. We really appreciate your time and Melanie's time and all the expertise. We do have a few questions in the Q&A that we will get answers to and respond by email as we are over time. So we appreciate all this information very much. I want to remind our attendees that we have a follow-up webinar today at 2 p.m. where we will be going through the EIDL application in detail. And I want to say a big thank you to all our partners who are working hard to support our business community and working with us to produce this program. I also would like to ask that you bookmark this site, which is oneeastside.org/spark. There you will find key resources, information on our no-cost one-on-one advising, our weekly webinars, and grant opportunities as they become available. And another quick reminder of our upcoming webinars will be on the next slide. And a big thank you to everyone for participating here today. So until we see you again, this concludes our webinar. Thank you.